you got the pledge? Call this Washington County Board of Education meeting to order. After a brief moment of silence, Mr. Riddle's going to lead us in the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, before we approve the agenda, I have a request to add a few items under agenda item 7. Is that right?
For discussion.
For discussion. School year 2022-23 meal prices, budget amendments, agreement with TCAT/TBR for Old Boones Creek Elementary, Boones Creek Athletic Fields, and did I include B in that?
Request to move that item to discussion as well.
Okay, and then request to move item 6B2, which is approval of payment up to $150,000 to complete the turf installations at Boone and Crockett High School, line 141 E762 499 00015, Daniel Boone High School, item number 141 E72620 49 00016, David Crockett High School, to item 7 for discussion and presentations. Can I get a motion for that?
Moved.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
Thank you, sir.
As presented.
As presented.
Voting is open.
I've lost it, sis. I don't know what I've done.
I'm following the mine ain't opening.
How do you vote, Mr. Irvin?
Aye.
Can I get a vote?
Yes. Mr. Day?
Aye.
All approved.
Okay. Very good.
Don't mess with me. I ain't gonna touch it.
Okay.
Approval of meeting minutes. May 5th, May 16th, and May 24th.
So moved. Second.
Okay.
Voting is open.
Can I get a vote?
Mr. Day?
Yes.
All approved.
Okay. Announcements. Mr. Boyd.
Yes, sir. It was listed in the agenda, just the public announcements. The board's architect working on both the facility study and looking at the athletic master planning, athletic facility master planning. They have identified June 13th, 6 p.m. at David Crockett High School as a public forum, an opportunity for the public to come in and give input on just their thoughts on facilities needs for that, the north end, so to speak. And then on June 15th, well, I've got it backwards. David Crockett, so the southern end is on the 13th, and then Daniel Boone is on the 15th. Both of those meetings will be at 6 p.m. at the schools. Their intent is to provide just a public opportunity to give input to feedback. They wanted to do that, they didn't want to finalize the full plan and then go to the public for, they wanted during the process to give the public opportunity to give feedback.
Have they looked at the lights and the posts and stuff?
They have not. We have other local groups looking at that. Yes, sir. And Mr. Patrick was hoping to get some estimates before today's meeting, but in fact we didn't receive it. Dr. Adams was shaking his head, no, we did not receive those today. The hope is that we can do some remedial work and make sure the lights work, and then as we do the long-range master planning, then we can discuss upgrades. Just the board workshop is scheduled for June 21st, 5 p.m. And then that week also is a scheduled county commission meeting on Thursday the 23rd at 5:30. We hope that they're in a position to consider approval of the budget. And then the regularly scheduled county commission meeting is the next Monday the 27th. And just also the July board meeting, per request, was rescheduled for Thursday, June 30th. So it will not be a first Thursday meeting in July. It'll be on the last Thursday of June, prior to the next week. Other things, superintendent reports. We have just the standard enrollment updates as we ended the year with our enrollment. Pretty consistent from throughout the year. We have also all of just the financial reporting, the day-to-day operation there for board review and public record. Maintenance report, same for public record in the minutes and board information. Personnel report, you can see all of the activity up to as late as early today. And our personnel this time of year is very active. We have several positions posted. Our schools and departments are interviewing to fill. So that reflects the activity of hires, rehires, terminations, resignations, and so on. You want to call out the grant report. We continue. Mrs. McKinney continues to seek out and acquire grants for us. Some of her work has been focusing on school safety, even prior to the terrible incident in Southwest Texas. So we're going to continue to seek available funds. Those funds that we have targeted over this year is to continue to secure and install radios in all our buses. So next phase to put radios in more buses. Also looking at some additional funds for increased security at our schools. Continuing to, we have controlled access doors, we have surveillance cameras, but there's always things we can continue to improve on. But Ms. McKinney's doing a great job of identifying and securing and managing grants for us. Go back, I clicked on that to look at it. The other announcements. Let me get back to where I was. I'm sorry.
Holidays,
Sure.
that's when they're
Okay. And that's pretty much all. And I do have one announcement. Other than there is item 5F, just distributing the annual calendar for the district office hours. That's just a listing of the holidays will be closed and times that the district office and all schools and offices and services will be closed for the next year, going into the next school year, beginning July 1st. Last announcement is we're continuing on our search with the David Crockett High School principal position with the retirement of Mrs. Peggy Wright, which is official. I guess Monday maybe is the official date, the 6th. But anyway, as we have continued to keep our application window open, as we're reviewing applications as they come in, we still consider the applications open, looking for that most qualified candidate. And in the meantime, summer and transitioning to a new school year is very busy, always is. And the team can't be shorthanded, and I've asked Dr. Keys to serve as interim principal at David Crockett High School until such time we identify and hire a permanent principal. So she will be shifting her duties to lead David Crockett, supporting the team, the administrative team, all the faculty and staff, students and families. And I've asked her to make sure that's her primary focus over the next however long it takes, 15, 30, 40, 60, and we don't want to go beyond those days, but if we do, she's ready. And I appreciate her stepping up, and she has the support of the academic team and every other team in the district and all of her colleagues across Washington County to ensure that she can best support David Crockett High School. Thank you, Dr. Keys.
She might decide she just wants to stay.
She may. My door's open, she can come talk to me.
All right,
That's all the announcements, yes, sir.
All right, consideration of the consent agenda.
Second.
Pull something else.
Voting's open.
Jennifer?
Yes. Mr. Day.
I'm a yes.
All approved.
Okay. Mr. Boyd, you guys?
On the discussion and presentation portion, sure. The first item, 7A, is award bids for tires and oil. Dr. Adams or Mr. Hale, did we receive bids that have we identified the winning
We
bid?
received one bid for the oil from Greenville Oil and Petroleum, which we've been using for the last 7 or 8 years. It's a little bit more expensive. I believe it's $11.96 a gallon. We had 2 bids for tires, and the low bid came in from a grouping. Let me go back. I forgot. Heath, if you can pull up that exclusion.
Okay.
Or not exclusion. Escalating clause. The oil company did want to add in an escalating clause into their oil bid, basically saying that they want to be able to raise the price for us as the price is raised for them at the same level that it is to them.
How do you, I get that, but how do you know they're passing along that amount of money? I mean, it'd be hard for anybody to lock something in right now, I guess, but
It's $11.96 a gallon?
Yes, $11.96 a gallon for the oil.
I mean, that may be nitpicky, I don't know, but I mean, it's just,
That's a great question.
anybody can tell you what, my lumber guy tells me all the time what it went up, but I've never seen his paperwork. I just paid the payments, so I don't know if you can ask that question, or is this something we need to vote on right this minute? I don't want to complicate things, but.
Well, the only thing that I would suggest in their escalating cause is that the board would need to act on that. I mean, it's the board's contract to purchase the oil, and they have a right to include that clause, but there should be a statement to where, they would submit their intent to raise, and the board would need to act. And there should be some language that if it's unreasonable, the board can make a decision.
I believe in the actual bid documents, they have 30 days
Okay.
if they intend to raise the price.
Okay,
they
so
give us
it's in the
notice.
language, okay.
So, okay, let me ask you this, that's a great point. So, in the language, and what if we or whoever's sitting here disagrees with, so are we signing a year's contract,
Well,
but all we're saying is we get to act on the notification?
right after that 30-day period, when they notify us they want to raise the prices, if the school board says we don't accept that, then we can null void the contract with the oil company. But then that leaves us having to go buy oil basically
Yeah,
off the street. So
might be cheap.
that might
Well,
I
I
got
would say if we buy it in 55-gallon drum and go ahead and buy several drums,
that's how they're selling it to us.
I know.
They just broke it down like
and
that.
they're breaking it down into gallon things.
Well, I mean,
96 gallon.
you- I think
Should be
you-
cheaper than that.
I think you'll be okay as long as you have an opportunity I mean, you
But
can,
what I'm saying is, let's go ahead and buy several drums now,
oh, ahead of time.
ahead of time.
At that price.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just select.
We can certainly do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think from an operation side, that would be what we would do. I mean, there is a limit to what we can store, but as much as we can and what we know we will use, we certainly should lock that price in and purchase.
That gives you plenty of time to go for it. Okay.
Hey, quick question. I mean, you got an escalation clause there, and I think, you know, 99% probably gonna see oil prices stay where they are or climb. So what if they go down from where they are today?
It's another great question.
Is there a de-escalation clause?
I
They keep
say
that same
everything-
margin.
We
everything's
can
a gospel in
counter
that.
offer and write a de-escalation clause.
I don't believe it's currently in the language.
I'm sorry.
Good point.
A very good point. Works both ways, don't it? Okay, so what we need to do, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to get
Well, if
started.
you would consider it a motion to approve the recommended bid with all of the appropriate language in the agreement.
Did you make that, Dee?
I can't,
Okay. Does anybody want?
because the way I'm sitting here figuring, you can buy 2.5 gallons of Shell Rotella for about $18. I'm paying $11.96 for a gallon. So,
Well, I don't know, I mean, I'm not by any means an expert on it. I guess I hear you, but I don't even know where it comes from. Like, if I go down here to AutoZone, they
we've
sell
had that
out.
same contract with them for years, and they're the only ones, and it's funny that they're the only ones that ever puts a bid in, because nobody else puts a bid in. Where's the county buying their oil at?
Greenville Petroleum, a fair amount of stuff comes from the highway department. I can't tell you I don't know where the sheriff buys garage oil from.
Well, what's the other option? I mean, where are you
Well,
gonna
they
go buy
ain't-
that?
I mean, that's the thing, I mean, we can buy it, go ahead and keep buying it, but I feel like the price is gonna keep going on up. I don't see anything.
Well, everybody needs
turning around.
competition, I don't disagree, but
And
for
I
some
know.
reason we ain't getting it.
You know, I try to buy 55-gallon drums. So.
I do know in the past where we've had additional bidders, that Greenville always comes in as the low bid.
Yeah. And they may be very well, it may be as fair as you can get.
Their customer service has been top notch. Talking to Tony Roberts and Lynn Archer, they're always satisfied with their customer service.
Well, does anybody want to make a motion we move forward with it?
I'll make a motion to move forward with the
Appropriate language?
appropriate language. Yes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we got a second. Any more discussion before we vote? Okay, let's vote.
Voting is open.
Here.
How do you vote, Mr. Day?
I'm gonna vote yes. Don't think I got any other options.
All approved.
All right, the second bid we had was for tires. We had two bids. Low bid was from Southern Tire Mart out of Kingsport. They actually low bid on both tires, not by much, but the Truck Tire Center out of Knoxville, of course, is in Knoxville. Southern Tire Mart is in Kingsport. Again, you can see they were the low bid for both tires. Firestones, talking again with Tony and Lynn at the garage, they're totally satisfied with the brand. And our recommendation is that we accept the low bid from Southern Tire Mart.
Any more?
I'd like to make that motion, please.
Second? Anyone?
Second.
Any discussion before we vote? Let's vote, Jim.
Voting is open. Mr. Day?
Jennifer, I'm gonna say yes.
Okay. All approved.
Okay. Boyd?
Okay, I think that's all on the bid, on those bids.
Oh.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay, next is review of policies, item 7B. These are our first reading only. One is we discussed in the work session around cleaning up our vacation and holidays policy to reflect actual practice and also align with the MOU. This one is actually, I'm sorry, this one is 5.316, what's on the screen is 5.6101. We'll just take that one first. Well,
Okay, sorry.
since you had it up, the order doesn't really matter as long as we address both. This is to align with the salary scales and the change. This included calculations of supplemental pay for positions that now are on a straight salary scale, so that these calculations are not applicable. And that's for the principal, the assistant principal, the assistant director of schools. Everything else remains the same as past policy. It's just a removal of the language of those positions in this policy. And a request, just consideration on first reading to move it forward to second reading for final consideration. And then if we want to take both policies
Let's
at
do
the
them
same
together
time,
if you feel good
since
about
it's
them.
just first reading only. The next is the vacation policy. And that's, again, like I was saying a minute ago, is to align both with being more specific about how vacations are acquired by our employees, and we have different classifications of employees. The original, the first statement is specific to 12-month full-time employees that are non-certified, whether they're exempt or non-exempt, which means whether they're salary or hourly wage employees. It's the same as the former policy. You can see in green where just some clarifying language was added. If you scroll up there for me, Keith. Same policy, no change. There is a change, however, that I'm asking for the board to consider. Is in current policy, employees, if they do not use it within the year, if they do not use all of their vacation, they lose any unused vacation days. And I'm just requesting that we set the mark to allow them to bank up to 5 days. So, for example, if they have 10 vacation days and in that year they only use 5 of them, currently at the end of that year they would lose those 5. I'm asking that we at least let them carry forward 5 days.
So that makes them have 15?
The next year, yes. But they could never exceed the
Over
5 bank
15.
days. Yes, yes. It just, I certainly want to encourage, and I know the board does, for them to use their vacation time, but sometimes there are years where they don't. And I just believe giving them a chance to maybe bank and roll over. They could even plan in the next year, if they think they're going to, family reasons, or they're going to take an extended vacation, they could plan accordingly, being allowed to roll over at least 5 days.
That's for non-exempt.
That's for the non-exempt, where the vacation policy is applicable. Yes, sir. And non-certified professionals, just to use a specific example, sitting in the room would be Mr. Hale. He's a non-certified professional staff or exempt and salaried employee. It would be applicable to him.
Do we hear it?
And so if we can scroll up some more, this is a pretty lengthy policy. The other change you can see in green, had little discussions over the year and review of policy and practice. Our 12-month certified employees, which are include our supervisors, directors, now in our organizational chart, chief and deputy chief, The ones that are certified in their position requires a teacher certification or administrator license or that level of certification. They're on a different calendar. In the Collaborative Conferencing Act, they're considered and defined in that law as management. So they're not subject to the MOU as far as the terms of the MOU. But what I wanted to state was they will receive time off, but it will be based on their annual contract. They don't have bank days, they won't roll days over, but each year they will have non-contract days within their contract which they could take time off. That's based on their annual contract they're on. The next is just specific holidays and cleaning up and matching practice. This applies to all 12-month non-certified and certified employee holidays. You can see those listed there. In the green is the changes, and we also pulled out those that are non-certified salary and hourly employees, those exempt, non-exempt employees that work less than 12 months, we specifically call out holidays that they are paid holidays. And then the last statement is all of the certified employees that are under the memorandum of understanding. There's specific language in there that the professional staff, as they engage in collaborative conferencing, they list, and that just indicates that those employees defined as professional personnel, which is outlined in the MOU, will be subject to what's in the MOU, and that includes vacation days.
So the 12-month certified are the administrators?
Yes,
and
ma'am.
Most of the central office?
All those that are in certified supervisor positions, including principals and assistant principals, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
They're on the management team of the MOU, of the collaborative conferencing, and it just more clearly and definitively defines their contract.
Well, now, sometimes, go back to the days, the holidays that we got off.
Go back up, if you can.
Right there.
Yes.
Sometimes we've had to take Martin Luther King Day and President's Day because of the weather. Now, are we still offering that as a day off and we have school? How?
We can, the board would act on that to change the date
You know,
based on the need. Yeah, it's in there as a holiday, but, you know,
And we can still take it if we.
board can take that action, yes.
If it's bad weather, snow, or whatever, we need that.
But we have the stop holidays built in some winters, and it's, you know, certainly it's happened in this region of Tennessee. I know it's happened in others, where, yeah, you get to that. But for the most part, those are, and really you're only talking like you called out, the January and February months are the
Yeah.
concern. But that's just trying to clarify the language. This is first reading, so it's not going to be approved tonight. But, you know, we bring it back to second reading. If there's any input that you would like to be clarified, something you'd like to be clarified prior to your final consideration.
Any thoughts about, well, if you work on the second reading for, you know, like your Christmas and New Year's Day, where you've got a holiday with two, is that moves across the week on a calendar?
Yeah,
Would
and
you
we might
want-
can put that language in there.
so
If
that
it
you
falls
could-
on a weekend, then we make adjustments accordingly.
Yeah, so you got
Yes.
Monday and Friday or
Yes.
whatever. it might be.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that may be, if you go to the bottom, Heath, this bottom statement.
Oh, okay.
The very bottom of the policy.
You got it there, all right.
Yeah, that's in the previous language.
Okay.
Basically, if, you know, taken when these
Okay.
days fall on weekends.
Okay.
Would it be appropriate to waive second reading, or do you feel like we need to work on this just a little bit?
Well, the board always has that option. If you're comfortable with that, that would be,
I don't disagree, but
but I
I
think,
wouldn't think any of
I know,
them
I'd
three
like to
would
give them a chance.
That's what I was,
care.
right.
I'd like to make.
Because I know Chadwood's been all over it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that maybe we'll
Yes.
get in touch with people too. Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve first reading policy number 5.310, 5.6101. Second.
Any discussion? Okay, let's vote.
Who seconded that? I'm sorry.
David,
Jarvin.
Sam. Yes.
Mr. Day, how do you vote?
I'm a yes.
All approved.
Thank you. Next item, 7C, is, as we get back into hopefully what looks normal, the annual Junk World Day, and there's been a previous practice of utilizing our buses and our bus drivers for transportation on that day as a partnership. And there were fees applied, and this is just an updated MOU for that type of a day, as well as would be applied to any other outside agency that requests the services of our buses for their events. The big change here from previous language is the numbers. It was $12 an hour, but in calculating their daily rate on their routes and breaking it and making it an hourly wage, minimum is $16 an hour. So we felt it was reasonable to make the agreement reflect that, and then also the per mile amount, as well as the fixed charges. We just asked approval of this, and this will be applied both to specifically when we have requests from Jonesboro for days like this, and then any other agency like that.
And storytelling has done that in the past too.
We feel our bus drivers, of course, need to drive the buses. They're using our buses and need to pay for the mileage, but they should get, what is considered a fair wage, which should be the minimum hourly wage they would get on their normal job.
That's good.
Make a motion to accept this MOU.
So it's not specific just to...
This particular one is, but I just wanted the board to know this would be the template we would utilize for other agreements like this.
All right. Let's vote.
Voting is open.
Look here. Get the vote.
Second wheel.
Get excited. I get to be on the back of the boat.
All approved.
Next item is really, just a discussion item, mowing at Boone Creek and the new Jonesboro School. We're still working through what the agreement is on maintenance of the grounds for the future Boone's Creek athletic fields, and then also the future Jonesboro Elementary School. A lot of agreements have been made, and we just want to get those finalized. The Jonesboro School will be open very quickly, and then we also hope we see very good progress on the Boone's Creek athletic fields too. But currently, we are mowing. Our crew is mowing the Boone's Creek athletic area. So now we have items. Don't we?
Yeah, it doesn't matter what order, does it?
Well, we'll go in the order
All
that's
right.
listed.
No process?
Yeah, we'll do a request from our school nutrition staff, and Ms. Kite, and Dr. Adams is here to answer any questions about 22-23 meal prices. These were derived from a calculator provided by USDA at the federal and state level, based on our services and cost and so on. So Ms. Kite did not just make these up. These actually come from a provided calculator.
Does that say? Okay.
But annually, the board must act on meal prices going into the next year.
$2.90 for high school lunch. I'll tell you, I don't know, that's a pretty cheap meal.
And they're proposing to go to
Three, yeah, the top line is the current, and then right underneath that is what the change would be. So elementary would increase from 170 to 180 for breakfast, and middle 170 to 190. High school, as you see, 170 to 2, and then the adult meals go from 250 to 3 for breakfast. The lunches, as you see, 250 to 260 in elementary, 260 to 270 in high school, from 290 to 3, and adult meals are 4 to 425.
This is just aligning it with the state, with what the state wants us to do.
Well, you know, Ms. Kite, like I said, has to use a provided calculator, you know, kind of a scale, and that was the increase that was recommended. Is probably a light work, probably what would be considered required.
Anybody?
I'd like to make a motion, we approve the increase in meal prices as proposed.
A second. I guess you'll need to have this in some printed at the beginning of, I mean, that needs to be.
Yeah, it goes out in communication to
Right.
families, yes, in school, both schools, the district provided
And
communication.
any type of a handbook or anything.
Application for free reduced lunch.
Right, exactly.
What you got?
Well, I was just gonna say, I think milk prices is gonna go out the roof too, so, I mean, I don't know if that's gonna even be enough.
You always
Something like
adjust it
that.
later.
Yeah, we can. I mean, going into the year, this is what we start with, so we can communicate, and families can be aware, but if there are changes need to be made mid-year, I mean, that's always something that can be brought back to the board. And I believe Ms. Kite will do that if it becomes necessary.
All right, let's vote.
Voting's open.
Our three unattended will just have to pull on.
All approved.
I think we can make a decision without them, but we can't.
Next item on the going down the list was the end of year budget amendments. Mr. Held can answer any questions. We'll talk through any of the highlights of the budget amendments for the end of the year.
Sure, so you've got two amendments for the general fund to choose from. And the reason there's a difference is, I know you all are just going to discuss potentially paying off the rural debt that we owe the county. We had an offer of $720,000 to pay $720,000 to pay that off. So you've got a budget amendment that has that in there, and one that does not have it in there. Other than that, they are the same. There was, as normal, with end of the year true-ups on the lines, balancing lines. There's the normal amount of that, but there's some additional things this year. We have summer grants, about $1 million worth of summer grants over 4 specific grants, where I had to budget additional revenue and expenses as well. And then there's just, especially in the maintenance category, we've had some large hits this year with repairs, so I've had to do some pretty substantial adjustments to the maintenance category to make that balance. So the way it's laid out, the far right column is the new budget. That white column right beside it is, you'll see the adjustment. When you see a positive number, like it's on the screen right there, just blow that up just a little bit if you can. There's a number of $141,835 on that white column. That is the increase in that particular line. Now that's a revenue line. It's the first 2 pages are your revenues. So when you slide over, you can see the center. So the center column is the budget that's in effect right now. The first shaded column was the original budget. This next white column was the first budget amendment we did back in December. So the center shaded column is the budget that's in effect now. The next white column to your right is where I have all the adjustments, whether they be positive or negative. And then the far column, which is yellow, would be the new budget. That would be the year-end budget going into effect. This has no effect on next year's budget. This is just a year-end budget to clean up any lines that are out of balance, make sure all the categories are in line. And then, of course, with summer school this year, again, those grants that are coming in through the general fund, that complicated it a bit. So I have those in there as well. We did have to budget the bonus that was paid out, so that is in there as well, to true that line up as well, which ended up being around $440,000 with fixed costs and everything's where that number came in. I believe we estimated it to be around $435, so we was real close on that estimate when we did that. But all of that's baked into this, so there's about 9 pages with all this. I don't know if anyone has any questions yet, but we will need to get this to the county budget committee so that it can get on the June commission meeting to get approval to make these entries before June 30th, which is accounting year end close. So we would need approval tonight on this, on one of the budgets, whether one with the 720 paying the county rural debt or without, whichever you all decide.
You know, based on the workshop discussions, the retirement of the rural debt was placed under consent agenda. So the board has approved the consent agenda, so that amount has been approved.
Okay. So then it's taken care of then in the budget amendment.
I'll move then that we adopt, which one are we at?
Amendment 2.
Not the one that's
so-
kind of highlighted. the-
Yeah, so
The one that's on, the one, yeah, the one.
The one
we're
that's
looking
on
at.
has it in it, and where, go to the last page, Heath. Very last page, and I'll show you all where this is. So there you'll see the 720 at the bottom, so that is in the transfer outline. If you go over to the left, you can see the line number. Scroll that over. Yeah, so line number, this is 141E99100-590. So that's the line, it's a transfer outline. You'll see the 260 was already in there because we already paid that out for this year. So the 720 was the amount that saves us about $60,000 over the 3-year period. So that's where that goes into the budget. That's the one you'd be approving here. After this, we'll talk about dietary year-end budget amendment.
So just Jim.
Got a second on that?
I'll second.
Who made the motion, Mr.
Mr. Meredith. Any other discussion before we vote?
So is this motion to vote on the 722? Is this part of it?
We already voted on
Is
that.
that, I mean,
So yes. Yes and yes. We already voted on it, and then yes, we're
so
clarifying.
we're actually gonna pull $1 million out of fund balance to pay this off. Well, because the
720.
260's already been paid, and we're fixing to pull another 7, so it's been, right at $1 million to pay this. And all of our fund balance
The $60,000 savings.
over the next 3 years.
All right, let's vote then.
Voting is open. It approves, 1 no.
Guess who that was?
I couldn't imagine. Oh, no. There it is.
Yeah, so this one, over there, is the dietary year-ending budget amendment. So we've had a lot of movement with revenues and expenses in dietary this year. We've talked about the increases in expenses they've incurred, but they've had about double those increases in revenue come in. So this year, you'll see at the top section, scroll up or down just a little, you'll see a lot of adjustments there to the revenue. And what that's based off of is the 11 months that's been completed of actual revenue. So those are not projections. That's real revenue, and it's conservative because I didn't even consider what was going to be coming in June. So that's a conservative revenue estimate, but you can see a significant bump there, nearly $900,000 or close to it. But that's warranted, and that's based off actual 11 months of revenue. So I've upped the revenue from 3.863 million to a budgeted 4.7. They will surpass that based on what I saw in the 11-month numbers.
Let me ask you a question on the, if you go from the middle column, which has revenue of 3.8 million,
Yep.
which includes fund balance of almost 800,000. So
Correct.
it means that's real revenue of 3 million to 4.7.
Correct, without any funds.
So that's 1.7 million of revenue increase.
You're
Okay.
correct.
Oh, Mitch is good at math, ain't he?
Doesn't get past it. Not much, a little bit.
But I look-
I mean, that's
That's
small.
significant.
Yeah.
And that's where we've talked, we're getting paid in full for all the meals, you know, we know some of that's gonna stop, you know, coming into next year, so next year we'll see where that falls, once it goes back to normal reimbursements. But that's how significant it's been this year. So when we go to the bottom, there's certainly some adjustments to expenses. Caitlin's really had significant increases in supply cost and materials, been hit hard. Obviously, the revenue has outpaced that this year, So they're still they've got the highest fund balance they've ever had right now. But those are the reasons for those adjustments, and some of those are quite large adjustments in those expense line items to actively reflect what we're seeing with 11 months of operations. So when we go to the bottom, you can see the expense increase, estimate was 3.863 up to 4.553, but there is nothing at that bottom right, projected fund balance required to cover this gap. And again, I was conservative on that revenue, so they're very likely to exceed that revenue projection. So, but this actively reflects the year-end and budget amendment necessary for dietary. Certainly no funds are required, no additional funding from us, the county, or anything. It's just approval needed to make those budget adjustments.
What was the total revenue side? The total revenue number?
About 4.7 is what I've got in this.
Okay, so we added to a couple $100,000 fund balance.
Yeah, but it's really more, it could be more than that, because I was conservative on that 4.7. It's probably going to come in above 5.
Okay,
Is
good.
my guess.
I think that it's gonna crash when the kids have to start
Oh, yeah.
going back to
Oh,
buying lunches
yeah.
and stuff.
And that's why I
paying
wanted to caution y'all with
And-
that,
and
because
I-
that won't continue, I don't think.
I would really like to get Kaylin in here and talk to us, and tell us about the things that she can serve at our lunches legally to keep that from happening. You see what I'm saying? I mean, what's out there, what can we serve our kids that makes them want to eat the school lunches? You know, so, I mean, Jerry, are there anything?
I mean, I just know there's a lot of restrictions that Caitlin has to work through. She would best be able to explain those, so she could answer your questions. We could either have her
A workshop or something?
schedule her to be at the next workshop, to spend time and answer those questions. But I know she has to navigate all of those requirements, and a lot of the menu is more or less laid out for our, school nutrition programs, as far as options go.
I'd like to see those options. I'd like to see, if we had to put, I don't know if we could even have a salad bar back in the school or not, or a potato bar or anything like that. I mean, is that,
Kaylin can answer those questions.
if we had to put a little money into something like that.
But those would not be reimbursable meals. They would be à la carte type items, where it would be additional costs.
So it wouldn't be considered a lunch?
I don't believe so. She would clarify if I'm incorrect, but those kind of items generally now fall under à la carte, and those are additional charges that don't need that, what you've approved in the meal cost, it's not addressed in.
So that's not gonna be included with the reduced?
I don't believe so, but like I said, Caitlin, this guy can answer.
Well, I'd like to request her to be here for the next workshop. We can.
Dr. Adams will make sure that she's informed and she's here.
Need a motion on this thing?
To approve the budget amendment, yes.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the budget amendment.
Second, Mr. Riddle, second.
She makes more money.
Let's vote. We done had
on card.
discussion.
Voting is open. All approved.
Thank you. If we could, the next two items are, well, they're not necessarily directly related, but they're along the same lines. If I could jump to the item we moved out of consent relative to the turf projects, and then we will come back to the TCAT at Old Boots Creek Elementary, and then finally the Boots Creek Athletic Field. So the item is request to move item 7B2 to approve payment of $150,000 to complete the turf installation at Daniel Boone and David Crockett. The board had previously approved up to 150. Our rock, we've been purchasing rock, and our rock has exceeded that amount. And we're asking, and Brad has looked at, available funds, and we're asking to increase that not to exceed $200,000. That should complete the project. We're done with rock, so it will complete the project, but it has exceeded the 150 amount.
And if I can say, this is already in the budget amendment that you approved, so the 200,000 is in there. The line number will change to 72,620, 499, where I had it listed in a different line number before.
To apply the funds to the cost.
We get a motion.
And that's going to the quarry, right? Locust Mountain.
I forget the name of who, is that the name of it, Jared? The rocks that were
Blue Water.
Blue Water, isn't it? Yeah, Blue Water.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's, we pulled that out and paid for ourselves to save money. And so we're paying for that directly through the contract that the county has for the rock.
We need a motion for that.
Yes, that one.
I request that.
I'll second.
Mr. Irvin, second.
Who made the motion?
Mr. Riddle. Let's vote.
Voting is open. All approved.
Right.
The next item, we'll go back up to agreement with TCAT and TBR for the old Moose Creek Elementary. The original board-approved agreement and signatures with TBR was a lease agreement. Recently, this week, we received a request from the state of Tennessee that in order for them to invest $15+ million, that their statement is that the state of Tennessee needs to be the owner of the property. They're asking, that the board donate or sell the property in the amount of $1 to the state of Tennessee so they can proceed with the project. Talked to Mr. Bennett today, this afternoon, about this and other things. This particular thing, he believes there's additional steps that would have to happen. He believes that there's case law that says the Board of Education cannot donate property to an entity. But they can transfer property to the governing body, the Washington County government, and then they can donate property to the state of Tennessee. So it would be a multi-step. Mr. Bennett would be involved in working with the county attorney to make sure all that was in place if the board proceeded. But right now, this was very recently received, and the language is different than what the signed agreement was originally.
I think we need to have everybody here to act on that.
Okay.
Myself.
Continue to get, Mr. Bennett to dig in and make sure all the details are covered. But just as a quick summary, the property, I'm reading straight from the agreement that they sent, the property shall be deeded to the state of Tennessee. The purchase price for the property shall be gift of $1, or the cost would be $1. Payment shall be made in cash, is what the language says. The big thing is at the beginning of this, and I sent this to Mr. Bennett, it indicated Washington County on behalf of the Board of Education, but for that to happen, the board would have to transfer the property to Washington County so that then they can proceed to donate the property to the state of Tennessee. So multiple levels if it were approved.
I'll ask his question. Us doing that, we don't have no ties to it. So any kind of classes that we'd want to have up there,
Yeah, that's that's an MOU with the TCAT and with that agency. This is the stance of apparently TBR in the state of Tennessee as the money that's been budgeted for them to invest in that money, their policy or expectation is the state of Tennessee will own the property.
And that means their students won't get any preferential treatment as far
That
as.
has nothing to
doesn't
do
have
with
anything to
ownership
do-
of property.
Okay.
You know, the board's stance early on was, we certainly will be glad to lease it to TCAT, and then, because the board maintains ownership.
Right.
This agreement is contrary to that. The board would not maintain ownership. Mr. Bennett suggested maybe there's some language there that we had included in the original agreement, that if it ever were to cease to be an educational institution, that it would revert back to the board. He felt like that language might be reasonable. He had, you know, so, but other than that, you know, he did say that the board, based on other case law, that they can't donate property to the state.
Well, I'm kind of like Mary Beth there. I mean, nothing's really changed. You weren't gonna get it back anyway, but
Yeah.
I mean, I like that language, and
Well, we will be then not negotiating. I mean, and Mayor Grady's in the audience too, and he's been involved from the beginning, of course, with this conversation. Our agreement for our student access will be directly with the TCAT. It won't be with the state of Tennessee. I mean, even though
Right.
TCAT is state of Tennessee.
Right.
It'll be with the TCAT Elizabethan at the Washington County campus.
Do
I'll
we
listen.
have that, do we already have that in the agreement or an MOU we've
It's not,
executed
it's-
with the TCAT as far as preferential treatment of Washington County students?
I don't think we got that
I
anyway.
think, when I talked to Lottie Rhines, which is a different, but she kind of led me to believe we were getting that.
I think
That's part of
I
it.
think they led us to believe, but there was nothing in writing that
Okay.
said
It was
that.
not in the language.
Yeah.
Okay.
But,
It's kind of like, yeah.
again, the memorandum, the MOU with the TCAT, just, only experience I have is my own past experience with TCAT. Had similar agreements. It was in writing. Our students got preferential placement in the programs that we were partners with the TCAT on, not like carte blanche across every program. We had specific programs that we were working with that particular TCAT in that region. Our students got preferential placement. It was in writing, and it was done according to the agreement.
I'd make sure that's done. I'd make sure that, as you said, if it's ever not educational, it comes back to the
But if we're
Yeah.
donating it to them, to the county, it'd go back to them instead of coming back to us.
I'd say in the deed it can be,
But, you know, all of those things,
Spelled
those
out.
stipulations, and certainly Mr. Bennett, and he indicated in other districts that he's represented, there's been some similar actions. So he has some language, I guess, from past
yeah.
agreements.
But that'd be just like if you had restrictions on yours and you sold it 3 times, it still
But-
applies.
I mean, I'm in favor of the TCAP. I want it. I think it'd be a great thing. But since all this has come up, you know, what's that piece of property worth? $1 million? More than that? $1.5 million?
I think we learned with the middle school is what the buyer will pay for.
Yeah, that's a good piece of property. But I think what we ought to do is let Mr. Bennett do his deal and bring it to us at a workshop, and when everybody's here, y'all all talk about it. And because I'll be honest, at this moment, I don't know what I'd do.
But I just want to make the board aware, and Mr. Bennett has been made aware, and, you know, he's willing to make contacts. What his question was, and what I believe from past action by the board is, you know, in the big view of it, is the board in favor of supporting the TCAT campus in Washington County on that piece of property. My answer was previous action indicated yes. So it's really now a lot of technical steps. It'll involve the county, but really want to lean on Mr. Bennett and his experience to make sure we have the right language.
Well, and you're right. Regardless of how it's worded, I'd say we was never getting that piece of property back. But the goal of educating people to a higher level is still the same. But Yeah, let's just do it at a workshop, if that's all
Okay.
right.
Yes,
Y'all
sir.
agree with that?
So no action requested at this time. The final item is discussion about the Boones Creek Athletic Complex. And just as, you know, some discussions have been had, the proposal has been, you know, our request has been made by the task force that is represented by the county commission, as well as the board, for the board's consideration of being partners in completion of the Boones Creek Elementary, or Boones Creek Athletic Complex next to Boones Creek Elementary.
Is, I don't want to throw Mayor Grandy under the bus. Are you here to speak on this?
I hope so. To answer any
Well,
questions.
if y'all, if everybody's good with it, that'd be great. And I guess, and I know, I guess you and Mr. Boyd had talked, and maybe others, I don't know who all talked where, when commission or whatever, but when we met last time, we had a workshop, and Manette's not here. She specifically had a question about ownership, to be able to provide, if the board so chose, can they, would the county be willing to transfer that property back to the board? We never had solid, I guess, during all the preliminary agreements with Jonesboro and the maintenance, and I know Mr. Riddle had brought up who's gonna take care of it, can that be put back on the board? Maybe us get paid to do that instead of Jonesboro. So I think all those questions was what we heard around the table. So if you got any help or ideas, I guess that would clarify. Is that what we're looking for?
Well, I mean, you know, there's a lot of details from past conversations about, like you mentioned, once the facility was established, the maintenance was indicated, it may have been a Jonesboro responsibility
Right.
through an annual payment. But, you know, the main thing is the schools we'd like to make sure the school teams have priority access to the fields and to the complex. If that's the case, and then if our crews are maintaining it, you know, and then also if the board contributes the requested amount, $1 million or more dollars, to actually complete the project as it's fully been planned, you know, that's also should be in a written agreement between the county and the Board of Education, how all those details need to play out.
And then one major concern a couple of people mentioned, and Mr. Buchanan specifically, was if the board even wanted to, can they give the county money for something they don't own? Is that legal? Can the school board pay the county for, to work on a piece of property that the school board doesn't own?
I'm not going to answer any good question.
If you don't know, don't answer. We don't know either. That's what we was trying to figure out.
We don't know. The county owned property committee this afternoon, several hours ago, voted to move a resolution forward to the full commission to invest another $2 million on this site to produce the fields and to get this project moving. Provided that the Board of Education was interested in a partnership in order to complete the project by producing a little bit of infrastructure between the fields and a facility that would house restrooms and concessions. So, you know, when we were here before and talked about it and created this task force or whatever that meant, that was sort of the conclusion that everybody has. We don't want to move forward with a project that's 70% complete, and nobody wants porta potties out there in the middle of the ball field. So the hope was from this committee and the discussion around this committee, and Linda, you can add whatever components you'd like to that meeting, but that the Board of Education and the County Commission partner to get a complete project that is suitable, and I think the language that was discussed was that it would be with structures and facilities of equal quality to what we have in our existing new facilities. Nobody also wants to see something that's not, what the expectation is. But we're at a point now where we have had some conversations with the field turf people, the same folks that are building fields, football fields, turf infields on the softball and baseball fields, grass outfields, similar to Cardinal Park. And that would reduce the maintenance substantially. It would certainly reduce the cost from the Board of Education's perspective to produce a tournament. We ask them out line the fields and that stuff. So there will be grass and the outfields need to be maintained. But in order to have this complex up and running in the spring, during the next baseball, beginning of the next baseball season, the turf parts of it need to be working, sort of start now. And that was the interest in this committee's work, is to try to get before those bodies to get the project moving forward. And there's a belief that we have had prices from commercial contract. This project's been priced a number of times, at least 3 times for this one building. But it's always been done by a commercial contractor. There's been no consideration for the possibility of working with local builders, that sort of thing. Also local suppliers who may be interested in donating to the community. And the committee felt like the Board of Education would have an opportunity, if they agreed to cover it, to substantially reduce the cost of getting that building there in the middle of the complex. Water's already there, sewer's already there. There's a number of infrastructure components that have been built into what's already been spent. If you recall, phase 1 was the regrading of the site to make it field grade ready. Drainage is in, the electrical conduits in for lighting. There are a number of components that have already been built at cost of nearly $1 million. So far, the county has in the project, the cost of the land and the other grading work that's been done, close to $6 million. And has 2.1 left in the budget to spend, which will build out the fields with field turfs and all that, the fencing, the necessary components it takes for 2 softball fields and 2 baseball fields. So that was the request, I think, from this committee. So to go to you and see if the Board of Education would be willing to say, okay, we'll support this other component that'll complete the fields and allow the county commission to authorize the spending of $2.1 million that they have available to get the project started so that it can be built and ready for the spring. Is that pretty close?
I think so.
So, is there 5 men left or 3 men left to finish? You said
The county has 2.1 million.
2.1 left. And
And-
did you say at the beginning they're doing another 2, or they just voted to release the 2?
They haven't voted for anything.
Okay.
County
You're only
has-
looking at 2.1.
Right, there's 2.1 left in the original planned budget for the complex. And that's enough money, based on our recent bids, to build the fields, to do the site work for the fields, the fencing, and pretty much everything that, with the exception of lights and the exception of the house that's about a 1,600 square foot facility with restrooms and concession.
So few questions. Would at that point, could the board have control of building out the project? and the county give the board the money? Or would the board give, I guess what I'm thinking is, I think we're very capable, if we did do something, we're capable of doing it ourselves. Would you concur, anybody? And I'm just thinking here, I'm just talking. You don't have to agree. I'm not suggesting, I'm just talking out loud. So, I guess, so is it ours or is it the county's? And then, because Mr. Riddle brought up a good point about the maintenance and the mowing and the money that the county agreed to pay Jonesboro for upkeep. If the county's keeping it and we're making a donation to finish it, how do we go about asking the county to pay us the $500,000 a year to maintain Jonesboro and Boone's Creek and us receive that money? I know it's two different things, but it's a pretty big deal because, as Mr. Riddle made a point, we can get our money back eventually and take care of it.
It is probably a really good idea, but that's an agreement that all of us have signed into the Jonesboro project.
Mhm.
So it would really be a matter of taking that facilities agreement and sort of destructing it and recreating it in a way that you suggest.
Yeah.
But that would be a process, because those agreements, and I don't know how, I really don't know what it would take to do that. So
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna go there. But in terms of the maintenance of the fields, I think that's something definitely we need to talk about and consider trying to figure out.
Mhm.
At least until this Jonesboro project comes online, which will be 1 or 2 seasons,
Mhm.
maybe just 1. But
Jonesboro's done said don't have enough money to build their ball fields. They're looking at grants and whatever else, so we might be 4 or 5 more years before we ever have anything in Jonesboro. Now, this is just Keith's opinion. Why wouldn't we ask the county to go and build the restrooms and whatever $2.1 million will be? And then if they've got any left, all right, we'll build 1 ball field. And then next year, if we can come to some kind of agreement, if we won't feel like we need to put money in it, then we'll build another ball field or two ball fields, whatever we can afford to do. But we gotta have bathrooms, concession stand first. You can't have a ball field without bathrooms and stuff.
Well, that was sort of, I guess that's another question. With the 2 point, y'all have, you have a project cost, right? I mean, do we have a completed project cost?
yeah, it's 5.7 million.
5.7. So even if we do, I think that, what you're talking to is $1 million, basically, for the bathrooms and this
Well,
900 something went out.
well, it's been priced at a number of
Several times.
Yeah.
But so how many, so we don't, I guess I was thinking they probably had a grand scope of work and what each thing cost. So do we know what 2.1 even gets?
Yes. In fact, that's the most recent bid that we have put out is for essentially the fields only. Didn't even include the building. So 2.1 will build the fields with the fence and develop the infrastructure around it. And that takes all the money that the county has available for this project.
And
And in order to have a complete project, as Mr. Irvin just mentioned, we really just can't have a set of fields out there that you can use without
right.
restaurants.
So where's the 5.7? What is that? What all else is there? I guess I didn't know.
Does that include the
I thought-
previous work that's already been done?
It does.
That's in
It's-
addition to?
It's work to do, but there were 2 other buildings in the project. There was a building up at the football field.
Oh, okay.
There was additional work at the football field. There were walking trails in there. There were a number of other components to the total
But
project.
this will finish the softball, baseball, and that facility. So that section of the project will be completely done.
Yes.
The only thing we'll have left is football fields and all that.
All right, the football field is graded. We haven't, we have actually prices, but we haven't considered purchasing bleachers or goalposts, for example, or a goal for soccer, if that's, needs both. So, and there was another building up there that was planned for restrooms, shelter, and concession. Which, if sports are going to be played, but the needs as described by the athletic directors who were part of the meetings was that, was for baseball, not so much football.
Let me ask you, this being devil's advocate a little bit here. I know you probably can't totally answer, well, you probably can't answer this in all places you can ask it, but why, if the county knew we was gonna do this, they know prices rise, how come they're not willing to step up anymore financially on this? Or where's that laying? Do they just ignore it and want us to do it, or should we ask them to do it, or should we ask them to do anything?
Well, it's like anything else. We had one plan for the project. And as most of the projects, particularly construction projects we've seen in the last few years, prices have changed significantly when this was planned. It was probably on the plan 5 or 6 years. And money was set aside, and we have used portions of the money, portions of the money obviously to buy the land, portions of the money and regraded to a grade that would support the fields. The way that school project left that site was a gradual slope from the top of the football field to the retaining wall out by Howard Church Road. And so all that had to be reshaped. And that was nearly $1 million to do that.
You got something? You're smiling.
This isn't gonna solve the problem, but I've been on the board for 6 years, and I'm trying to figure out why, at the time, the schools didn't have that property to start with. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get a little bit of a background history.
It was
what?
Why
didn't the
anyway?
schools own it from the start?
That goes back to sharing with our neighbor. Is that what that is?
Could have had something to do with it.
Probably had
Okay,
something
thank
to do
you.
with
I'm
it.
just trying to get a little bit of a background and trying to get a little bit. Thank you.
I see two different scenarios here possibly where, and if it's legal for us to give money towards the project, we can legally do that and not own the property that we see way to be awarded the mowing of those properties. I think we could possibly do that. Or possibly another possibility would be taking the allocated funds from the commission and passing along the project to the board along with ownership and maintenance of the property to the school board. I don't know the legality of that, but I think that's two good ways to get to where we all want to be. And it would be mutually beneficial. Now, the legality of it, I don't know.
I was gonna say,
I'm
that's something we
like
need to talk
Keith. I
about.
think that's a great idea. Let them finish the ball fields with what they got.
I want the bathrooms and the concession
First.
stand first.
Well, you really need.
You don't need them without a ball field.
What?
You're just gonna go over and use the bathroom.
How many times you been to the ball field that you needed to go to the restroom?
I know. I'm just kidding. I know
I mean,
you need
you
them,
got
but you don't
people-
need them without the ball field. That'd
Well,
be crazy to spend $1
we
million
build
for a
that.
bathroom. They just sit there.
Let them purchase, let them build that. It is theirs anyway. It is Washington County's Parks and Rec.
I get
That's
it.
what it targets. That's the excuse that was used when that property was bought
Well, I don't
to
disagree
keep
with
from
what-
sharing with Johnson City.
How many years ago was that? 5.
5 years.
2016.
I don't disagree with you, but things change and the
Well,
kids are going to use it.
But still,
I know you don't like the principle of it.
I want them to build their bathrooms, concession stand, and then if there's any money left, one ball field, one ball field. Then if it comes to the point that we want to put money in it, then we'll put money in it. My goal, of being on this board, is my 2 high schools.
I agree with that. 100%.
Redo the bleachers, bathrooms and stuff at the
Yeah.
high schools.
I think we have a lot of discussion, and I don't think we're willing to vote on anything tonight, since we obviously have 3 people that are not here. And I would like to have our board attorney in on some of these discussions. But yeah, we all want something the kids can use, definitely. And I think when we can come to some type of a, I'm willing to work and try to get what they need.
Well, that's where we were.
I agree.
And I think when the group came together, that was the goal. The athletic directors were certainly a part of the discussion.
Yeah,
And
that's it.
from their perspective, they're concerned about the feeder players that they're not seeing today from their school, from their baseball programs.
But I don't think at this time we're ready to make any, I appreciate it.
Well, that's fine, so the commission,
Well, but let me ask a question. I know we're not ready to commit, but are we wanting to see these ball fields come to fruition and have them used for our kids? And I don't, is that, Mayor, is that what you're looking for? Is at least some indication from this board that they want that to happen? Or do you need a firm commitment from this board for, one with 6 zeros behind it?
I really have, I would have a hard time, and actually the vote out of our committee today to move to the full commission was, if Board of Education is willing to partner and be sure that we have a restroom facility out there with these ball fields, and they were willing to make this recommendation to the full commission and release $2.1 million to bid out whatever work and spend that money to build the fields. But they were not, they just didn't want to have a 70% complete project. And so if we go out there and start it without a commitment, then my guess is the full commission would have a lot of reservations. That just like y'all did. I mean, there's probably more unanswered questions than there are answers. The broad question probably is whether or not the 2 boards are willing to work together in a partnership to get the project complete, since there's not enough money really in either place to do the whole thing.
I'd like to suggest that we authorize Director Board and Chairman Day to work with Mayor Grandy and develop a plan that's feasible for both the Board of Education and the County Commission, that we work together to answer the questions and things, and that I think that would be a little easier, and then bring it back to the board and to the commission. You guys kind of try to work out a deal that's going to work and benefit everyone. And the goal is to get done. I mean, you got kids without a place to play ball for 4 years. Too long. So the goal would be to move forward and work together to accomplish the goal. That's what it's all about, working together for a common goal and getting it done. Things happen. The longer we wait, the more it goes up. We know that. So we need to work together, and if that would tighten up and make the group a little smaller, and it's easier to make decisions in a small group, I would think, and then bring those decisions or suggestions back to the board and the commission. Would that be reasonable?
I mean, I'm fine working on it. I know I'd asked Mr. Boyd to reach out to Mr. Bennett and try to help answer everyone's questions, and then I think after that, once we get, I think if we do that, then we bring it to you guys and do whatever you want to do. I mean, but does that, and I don't want to put pressure on the board, but our meeting's in 2 weeks, roughly, 21st, if I remember correctly, our workshop.
Workshop, yes, sir.
But we can lay it all out on the table, and then does that, I mean, is it time sensitive enough we can meet and lay it all out one more time?
The commission meets on the 27th. So, if there is an agreement or a resolution for us to work together, if it's put in place before the 27th, then it hit the commission. And it's the same, as doing it tonight. So
Yeah.
that's no issue, really.
So do we need to do anything, and we may do nothing, I mean, who knows?
That's right.
But do we need to set anything up for that workshop meeting to where if the board wants to take an action to move it to them?
To be a call.
I would
Yeah.
I would recommend, if that's a potential consideration, that we advertise like we have done in previous workshops when board action might be needed. We both advertise a special call and then you adjourn and you go into workshop after that.
Well, let me ask this, can we do it in reverse?
Yeah.
You
the
can,
workshop first.
Yeah.
the board can decide to do it in any order that the board wants to do it.
Well, I mean, we need to talk about it and then we can,
Yes, sir, you
Then we
can do it.
can-
We can advertise it. And if so, Ms. Dillinger mentioned Mr. Bennett. I mean, if the board would like, we could request Mr. Bennett to attend physically, to be at the meeting.
So
well,
the goal would be, I guess, to come up with some sort of interlocal agreement to move forward with this in some capacity. And we need to make a motion for two of you to be declared Randy.
If you're gonna have I mean, that's a directive I've heard, but for formal action, if you're gonna have a board meeting scheduled on the 21st for potential, I don't know that you need to act on that because it would be considered that night. We can work on it, make sure you have the information, the board has the information you need, so you have a chance to take action if that's the case. And then, Mr. Bennett the whole time can be advising. The preliminary discussion based on, board member's request for me to have a conversation with Mr. Bennett, his overall arching comment was it would be beneficial to the board and probably the commission if there was a very clear written agreement.
I agree with that.
and then he can work with the county's attorney. They can get it all worked out to whatever, and if you don't want to do it, you don't do it, but at least everybody knows their options.
We know our options, and
Yep.
legally, we all will know where we stand
Okay.
as far as the property and/or possible transfer for the property or not.
And then I'd encourage everybody to get any questions to Mr. Boyd in the next week or so to,
That'd be really good.
That work?
Sort of work through that list.
fair enough?
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
It's the only request for action, I mean, just because you're here and you're in session, just to set a special call meeting for June 21st.
Do you want to do that? How do we want to break that down? We kind of got to put a time on it. Do we want to give ourselves an hour to discuss and then, but I don't want to do it and then we sit there for 35, 40 minutes before the meeting starts, but we can break it any time and have the call meeting and then go back to.
So we want to discuss it in the workshop first?
Yeah, we need plenty of time to discuss it,
We
so.
just need to have the call meeting on date.
I would suggest, you think about, like you suggested, an hour, if you think that's sufficient discussion time specific to potential, to the project, and then you go into a session, for example, at 6 p.m.
I was gonna say, let's
6:30 p.m.
call it 6 o'clock, we'll meet at 5. Surely in an hour, we can hear what we need to hear, and then we'll go to a meeting.
Do you have any other workshop stuff that you need for your other regular meeting that will be considered in terms if you're thinking
Well,
about timeline?
I would imagine so, but because of just the timing, we've taken care of budget and a lot of critical items tonight and previous, so it may be actually a light agenda for that June 30, which is the July meeting.
Is that good? Let's do that, and we can.
Everybody will be here too.
I'd like to, I know this is a project that needs to be done, and I sure would like to know what the architects is coming back with the figures and prices of what we're going to do to do high school.
Well, I had talked to Mr. Boyd about trying to push them along to give us something, because I want to know that too before I spend money on something else.
That's right.
I'd like to know. Cause I definitely wanna, I don't wanna, just like as with Boone's Creek, I don't want a bunch of incomplete projects. So,
On their review, I know that there's really two components to that. There's a district-wide review of the facilities, and then we've also got them looking at the athletic complexes.
Added on the athletic.
And so you commented earlier on the Boone and the Crockett public meeting. What about the rest of the system? Where do they stand?
That wasn't just Boone and Crockett, they were meeting at Boone and Crockett for the regional opportunity for those regions, public input on the system-wide master.
what's the public's input? Like, what does that look like? Like, what are they?
They'll just
what are they
lead
gonna ask?
conversation about, knowing their school, what are items they believe should be addressed and from their perspective.
I think that's great they're wanting input from the community.
That's what we're paying them.
I know.
That's what it's what they,
The 13th and 15th, we'll
Okay,
put it-
yeah,
we'll get it, we'll put it out there as well.
13th at Boone
Crockett first and then
6.
Boone 15th, and both are 6 p.m.
All right, is that all we got?
Wait,
we,
no,
Wait.
weren't you,
Well, I mean, I just, the board was here to take action on that special call meeting, is that what?
yes, I don't think we had that.
Policy doesn't require the board to take action on it, but since you're here, if you would like to.
You can call it, can't you?
Yeah, the chair can call it.
I'll call it.
Okay, then
Okay.
no
I'll
action
call
required.
it. 6 o'clock.
Okay.
what did we do about increase on fees on driving and lunches or
The per diems.
per
We
diem?
have not. That can be
Yes,
one item that does need to be at the workshop, so
It's-
that June 30th.
it was on there.
It was in the.
I thought it was on
Consent
there,
agenda,
on the agenda.
And the consent.
under consent agenda.
Which one?
Did we vote on the consent? We did vote on
You
the
did.
You did vote on the consent agenda.
It was E, it was E, under consent agenda. FY '23 per diem rates.
So we did vote to raise them then?
Wouldn't we just have those in alignment with whatever the state's doing? We have to take action.
The mileage rates.
Based on your policy, it aligns with the state.
We adjusted the breakfast, lunch, dinner, and
All the way down there.
policy and that.
Right
Just
before
for the state
discussions.
to align with the state.
Oh, yeah, right there. FY '23 per diem. Right.
Yeah,
And that's on your board's annual calendar for action anyway. You have to act annually on that, and I guess action is to align with the state.
you're getting there. Keep going. Wait, did you want to look at that?
No,
Are you good?
On the per diems.
unless
You
we're
good?
just Irvin.
Well, I'm good with it if that's what we,
Yes, sir.
It was basically what he said on what you suggested on the breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
At the workshop.
The rate.
We listen to you more than you think. Yes, we
58
do.
cents.
We went with.
Yeah.
Suburban.
We got your back,
You
Keith.
Suburban for the director? Oh, Lord.
Is it there?
Is it electric or propane?
Game over.
If you all approve it, we'll buy one.
I figured this, I'm sorry.
But let's go with